The first bullet shattered the coffee shop window like thunder cracking the sky. The second one buried itself in the brick wall where 8-year-old Emma Hartwell had been standing just 3 seconds earlier. By the third shot, Chen had already thrown himself forward, his weathered construction worker's hands wrapping around the little girl's trembling body as he pulled her behind the overturned table. But the gunman wasn't finished. Not even close. Marcus felt the fourth bullet tear through his shoulder, spinning him sideways. The fifth one found his ribs, stealing his breath and flooding his mouth with the metallic taste of blood. The sixth shot, the one that should have killed him, caught him in the chest as he used his own body to shield Emma from the chaos erupting around them. "Stay down, sweetheart," he whispered through gritted teeth, his voice barely audible over the screaming and shattering glass. "Don't look up. Don't move." Emma's wide green eyes stared up at him, tears streaming down her dirt-smudged cheeks. She didn't know that the man protecting her was Marcus Chen, a single father who worked 2 jobs just to keep his own daughter fed and housed. She didn't know he was 3 months behind on rent, or that his beat-up Honda had been repossessed the week before. She didn't know that saving her life would cost him everything, or that it would change the fate of 2 families forever. All Emma knew was that a stranger had wrapped himself around her like a human shield and was bleeding all over her yellow dress, while sirens wailed in the distance. Marcus's vision blurred as warmth spread across his chest. His body felt impossibly heavy, like he was sinking through the coffee shop floor into some dark, quiet place where pain couldn't follow. But he didn't let go. Even as consciousness slipped away, his arms stayed locked around the frightened child, protecting her until the paramedics pried his fingers loose. He had no idea that the little girl he'd saved was Emma Hartwell, daughter of Victoria Hartwell, the billionaire real estate mogul whose empire stretched across 3 continents. He had no idea that within hours the most powerful woman in the city would be sitting beside his hospital bed, watching him fight for his life. And he certainly had no idea that this moment of pure instinct, this split-second decision to protect an innocent child, would unravel secrets that had been buried for 20 years. If you're already hooked on this story, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love connecting with viewers from around the globe. The hook immediately establishes the collision between Marcus's world, struggling single father, and Emma's world, billionaire's daughter, while the reference to secrets buried for 20 years promises deeper revelations to come. This opening would definitely make viewers want to keep watching to learn what happens next. The sterile, white walls of Boston General Hospital had witnessed countless tragedies, but they had rarely seen anything quite like this. In room 314, Marcus Chen lay unconscious, his chest rising and falling with the mechanical rhythm of the ventilator. Tubes snaked from his arms like lifelines to machines that beeped steadily in the quiet room. His face, normally weathered from years of construction work, under the harsh sun looked pale and fragile against the stark hospital pillow. Beside his bed sat Victoria Hartwell, her perfectly manicured hands clasped tightly in her lap. At 42, she commanded boardrooms with the same ease that generals commanded armies. Her tailored black suit probably cost more than most people made in a month, and her steel gray eyes had negotiated billion-dollar deals without so much as a tremor. But now, watching the man who had saved her daughter's life fight for his own, those same eyes were red-rimmed and haunted. "Mommy, is he going to be okay?" Emma whispered from the small chair beside her mother. The 8-year-old's yellow dress had been replaced with clean clothes, but she still clutched the teddy bear the nurses had given her, its brown fur already worn soft from anxious squeezing. Victoria reached over and smoothed her daughter's honey-blonde hair. "I don't know, sweetheart. The doctors are doing everything they can." But even as she spoke the reassuring words, Victoria's mind was racing through possibilities that terrified her more than any hostile takeover or corporate scandal she'd ever faced. Marcus Chen had no family listed in his emergency contacts, except for a 9-year-old daughter named Lily. No insurance that would cover this level of trauma care. No savings account that could handle months of recovery. Dr. Sarah Martinez, the trauma surgeon who had spent 6 hours removing bullet fragments from Marcus's chest, had been blunt in her assessment. He's stable for now, but he's looking at multiple surgeries, extensive physical therapy, and at least 3 months before he can even think about returning to work. The damage to his shoulder alone. She had trailed off, but Victoria understood. Marcus Chen's construction career was over. The irony wasn't lost on her. The man who had sacrificed everything to save her daughter now faced losing everything himself. While Victoria controlled a real estate empire worth $3 billion, the man who had protected her most precious possession would likely lose his apartment within weeks. "Mrs. Hartwell?" A soft voice interrupted her thoughts. Victoria looked up to see a young nurse holding a clipboard. "There's a little girl in the family waiting room. She says she's looking for her daddy, Marcus Chen." Victoria's heart clenched. That's his daughter. Through the small window in the door, Victoria could see her, a thin 9-year-old with straight black hair and enormous dark eyes that seemed too old for her small face. She sat alone on the plastic chair, her feet dangling above the floor, clutching a rumpled school backpack. Her clothes were clean but clearly second-hand, and her sneakers had holes that someone had tried to patch with duct tape. This was Lily Chen, and she had no idea that her father was fighting for his life because he had chosen to save a stranger's child. Victoria stood slowly, her designer heels clicking softly against the hospital floor. She had built her fortune by making calculated decisions, by weighing risks and benefits with cold precision. But looking at this frightened little girl who was about to have her world destroyed, Victoria felt something crack open in her chest, something that had been sealed shut for 20 years. She thought of her own childhood, of sitting in similar hospital waiting rooms, alone and terrified, while her alcoholic mother underwent yet another treatment program that never seemed to work, of the foster homes, the temporary guardians, the constant uncertainty about where she would sleep each night, of promising herself that when she grew up, when she had power, she would never let a child feel that kind of helplessness. That promise had driven her to build her empire. Every deal, every acquisition, every ruthless business decision had been motivated by the need to create enough security that Emma would never face what Victoria had faced. And now, because of one man's extraordinary courage, Emma was safe, but his daughter was about to lose everything. Victoria walked into the waiting room. Lily looked up with hopeful eyes that immediately reminded her of Marcus's quiet determination. "Are you Lily?" Victoria asked gently, kneeling down so they were at eye level. The little girl nodded. "I'm looking for my daddy. The lady at his work said he was hurt and they brought him here, but nobody will tell me anything. Is he okay? Can I see him?" Victoria felt her throat tighten. In that moment, looking into Lily's frightened face, she made a decision that would change both their lives forever. Not because it was good for business, not because it would enhance her reputation or strengthen her position in the market, but because 20 years ago she had been exactly where this child was sitting now. "Lily," she said softly, "my name is Victoria. Your daddy was very brave today. He saved my little girl's life, and I'm going to make sure that everything is going to be okay." She didn't know how she would keep that promise, but she was going to try. 3 hours later, Victoria sat in her penthouse office high above the Boston skyline, but her mind wasn't on the city spread out below her floor-to-ceiling windows. It wasn't on the quarterly reports stacked neatly on her mahogany desk, or the international conference call she was supposed to join in 15 minutes. It was on a 9-year-old girl currently staying with a neighbor because her father was unconscious in a hospital bed. Victoria's assistant, James Morrison, stood in the doorway with his ever-present tablet. The quarterly board meeting has been moved to Thursday, and the Singapore development team needs your approval on the Richardson project. Also, Channel 7 is requesting an interview about today's incident. Cancel the interview, Victoria said without looking away from the window. And James? I need you to find out everything about Marcus Chen, employment history, financial situation, family background, everything. James raised an eyebrow. He had worked for Victoria Hartwell for 8 years and had seen her compartmentalize personal emotions from business decisions with surgical precision. This was different. Ma'am, if I may ask? He saved Emma's life, Victoria said quietly. 6 bullets, James. He took 6 bullets meant for my daughter and didn't even know who she was. The least I can do is understand what kind of man does something like that. What she didn't tell James, what she couldn't tell anyone, was that something about Marcus Chen's sacrifice had awakened memories she had spent 2 decades trying to bury. Memories of another man who had risked everything to protect someone else's child. A man whose face she could barely remember, but whose kindness had saved her life when she was just 14 years old. A man she had never been able to thank. The phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. Dr. Martinez's voice was cautious but hopeful. Mrs. Hartwell, Marcus Chen is awake. He's asking about Emma, wanting to make sure she's safe. He doesn't seem to understand that he's the one who nearly died. Victoria closed her eyes. Of course he was asking about Emma. Of course the first thing on his mind was the child he had protected, not his own injuries or his uncertain future. I'll be right there, she said. But as Victoria gathered her purse and headed for the elevator, she had no idea that the investigation into Marcus Chen's background would uncover a connection that neither of them could have imagined. A connection that would explain why a stranger had been willing to die for her daughter. A connection that would force Victoria to confront the ghosts she thought she had left behind forever. The elevator descended toward the parking garage, carrying Victoria toward a conversation that would change everything. In a few hours, she would learn that Marcus Chen wasn't just a hero who had saved her daughter's life. He was also the son of the man who had saved hers. Marcus's eyes opened slowly, like someone emerging from the deepest sleep of his life. The first thing he saw was white. White ceiling tiles, white walls, white sheets that smelled of industrial detergent and antiseptic. The second thing he noticed was the pain. A deep, throbbing ache that seemed to radiate from his chest through every nerve in his body. The third thing he saw was a woman he didn't recognize sitting beside his bed. Victoria Hartwell looked different in the harsh, fluorescent light of the hospital room. Without the commanding presence of her boardroom persona, she seemed smaller, more vulnerable. Her expensive suit was wrinkled from hours of sitting in uncomfortable plastic chairs, and her usually perfect makeup had long since worn away. But her eyes, those steel gray eyes that had intimidated corporate executives across 3 continents, were focused entirely on him. The little girl, Marcus croaked, his voice barely a whisper through his damaged throat. Is she? Emma is fine, Victoria said quickly, leaning forward. She's completely unharmed because of you. You saved her life, Mr. Chen. Marcus tried to sit up and immediately regretted it as pain shot through his shoulder like lightning. Good, he managed. That's good. Victoria watched as relief flooded across his face. Not relief for his own survival, but relief that a child he'd never met was safe. It was exactly what Dr. Martinez had told her. Even unconscious, even fighting for his life, Marcus Chen's first concern had been for Emma. "Mr. Chen," Victoria said gently, "I'm Victoria Hartwell, Emma's mother." Recognition flickered in Marcus's dark eyes, followed quickly by something that might have been embarrassment. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Hartwell. I didn't know. I wasn't trying to—" "You weren't trying to what? Save my daughter's life?" Victoria's voice was soft but firm. "Mr. Chen, you took 6 bullets meant for Emma. You nearly died protecting a child you'd never met. There's nothing to apologize for." Marcus closed his eyes, memories of the coffee shop flooding back. The sound of shattering glass, Emma's terrified face, the weight of her small body as he pulled her to safety. "Is Lily okay?" he asked suddenly, his eyes snapping open. "My daughter, she was supposed to come home from school." "Lily is safe," Victoria assured him. "She's staying with your neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, right now. She's been asking about you every hour." "I need to see her." Marcus struggled against the hospital bed, trying to sit up despite the tubes and wires connecting him to various machines. "She doesn't understand what happened. She'll be scared." "Mr. Chen, you need to rest." Victoria placed a gentle hand on his uninjured arm. "The doctors say you're going to need multiple surgeries. Your shoulder alone requires extensive reconstruction. You're looking at months of recovery." The words hit Marcus like another bullet to the chest. Months of recovery meant months without work, months without income. Their tiny apartment cost $800 a month, and he'd already been struggling to make rent even when he was working 60 hours a week between his construction job and weekend landscaping work. "How long until I can go back to work?" he asked, though something in Victoria's expression told him he wasn't going to like the answer. "Dr. Martinez says your construction career is over," Victoria said gently. "The damage to your shoulder was too extensive. But Mr. Chen, I want you to know I have to call." "My boss," Marcus interrupted, panic creeping into his voice. "I have to explain why I didn't show up today. And Lily's school, they need to know I'll be late picking her up for the next few days." "Mr. Chen." Victoria's voice was firm enough to cut through his rising panic. "Your boss already knows. The entire city knows what you did. You're a hero." Marcus laughed bitterly, a sound that turned into a cough that sent fresh pain through his chest. Heroes don't get evicted from their apartments. Heroes don't lose custody of their kids because they can't provide for them. The raw honesty in his voice hit Victoria like a physical blow. Here was a man who had sacrificed everything to save her daughter, and his first concern wasn't gratitude or recognition or even medical care. It was keeping his own child fed and housed. "That's not going to happen," Victoria said quietly. "Mrs. Hartwell, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but you don't understand. I've been 3 months behind on rent since they cut my hours at the construction site. My car got repossessed last week. The only reason Lily has food in the house is because Mrs. Patterson has been sharing her groceries with us." Marcus's voice cracked. "I can't accept charity. I've never taken handouts in my life." "This isn't charity," Victoria said firmly. "This is gratitude. You saved my daughter's life at the cost of your own livelihood. The least I can do is make sure you and Lily are taken care of while you recover." Marcus shook his head weakly. "You don't owe me anything. I did what any father would do." "No," Victoria said, her voice soft but absolute. "You did what an extraordinary person would do, and I'm going to make sure you don't lose everything because of your courage." She pulled out her phone and showed Marcus a news article from that morning. The headline read, "Hero Father Takes 6 Bullets to Save Billionaire's Daughter." Below it was a photo taken by a bystander, Marcus throwing himself over Emma as gunfire erupted around them. "The whole city is calling you a hero," Victoria said. "But they don't know what I know." Marcus looked confused. "What do you mean?" Victoria took a deep breath. What she was about to tell him would change everything. Mr. Chen, after the shooting, I had my assistant research your background. I needed to understand what kind of man would risk his life for a stranger's child. She paused, her hands trembling slightly. The investigation revealed something I never expected. She pulled out a manila folder from her purse. Your father was David Chen. He worked as a night security guard at Riverside Foster Home from 1998 to 2004. Marcus nodded slowly, confusion clear in his eyes. Yes, Dad worked there for 6 years before he died. But I don't understand. I was a resident at Riverside Foster Home from 2002 to 2004, Victoria said quietly. I lived there for 2 years after my mother died. The silence in the hospital room was so complete that the only sounds were the steady beeping of Marcus's monitors and the distant hum of activity in the hallway. Marcus stared at Victoria, his mind struggling to process what she was telling him. You knew my father, he whispered. Victoria's eyes filled with tears she had been holding back for 20 years. Your father saved my life, Mr. Chen, just like you saved Emma's. She opened the folder and pulled out a yellowed newspaper clipping from 2003. The headline read, Security Guard Prevents Tragedy at Local Foster Home. The article was brief, but it told the story of 14-year-old Victoria Maxwell, her maiden name, who had climbed onto the roof of Riverside Foster Home in the middle of the night, determined to end the pain of years of abuse and abandonment. I was on the roof for 3 hours that night, Victoria said, her voice barely above a whisper. I had given up. I didn't think anyone cared whether I lived or died. But your father found me there. Marcus's throat tightened as he read the article. It mentioned David Chen's patient conversation with the troubled girl, how he had talked to her for hours about hope and second chances and the possibility that tomorrow might be better than today. He didn't call for backup immediately, Victoria continued. He didn't treat me like a problem to be solved. He sat with me on that roof and told me about his son, about you. You were 14 then, too, the same age I was. He told me about how proud he was of you, how hard you worked in school, how you helped him take care of your sick mother. Tears were flowing freely down Victoria's cheeks now. He told me that even when life was hardest, even when you lost your mom to cancer the year before, you never gave up hope. He said you were the strongest person he knew, and that if a 14-year-old boy could find the courage to keep going after losing everything, then maybe I could too. Marcus felt his own eyes burning. His father had never told him about that night. David Chen had been a man of few words, someone who showed love through actions rather than speeches, but hearing about it now, Marcus could picture his father perfectly, patient, kind, willing to sit on a roof all night to save a stranger's daughter. He saved me, Victoria whispered. Not just that night, but every day after. He made me believe that I was worth saving. And when I aged out of foster care 2 years later, he helped me apply for college scholarships. He wrote recommendation letters. He even helped me buy my first business suit for job interviews. She pulled out another document from the folder, a scholarship application from Boston University, with a handwritten recommendation letter attached. The letter was signed by David Chen, and it spoke of Victoria's resilience, intelligence, and determination, with the kind of detail that only came from someone who truly cared. I built my entire life on the foundation your father gave me, Victoria said. Every success, every achievement, everything I've become, it all started that night when David Chen convinced a suicidal 14-year-old girl that her life had value. Marcus stared at the documents, his mind reeling. All these years he had thought his father was just a security guard working night shifts to pay the bills. He had never known about the lives David Chen had touched, the difference he had made. Why didn't you ever contact him? Marcus asked quietly. Why didn't you tell him what his kindness meant to you? Victoria's face crumpled. I tried. I went back to Riverside when I graduated college. I wanted to thank him, to show him what I had become. But they told me he had died 2 years earlier. Heart attack, they said. He was only 52. Marcus nodded sadly. 2006. I was 21, still trying to figure out how to live without him. I never got to thank him, Victoria said, her voice breaking. For 20 years, I've carried this debt to a man who saved my life and never knew the impact he had. And yesterday, when you threw yourself over Emma, when you took those bullets meant for my daughter, she looked directly into Marcus's eyes. I saw your father in you, the same courage, the same willingness to sacrifice everything for someone else's child. The two sat in silence as the weight of this revelation settled between them. The connection that had drawn Victoria to Marcus's bedside, the pull she had felt to protect his daughter, it all made sense now. Mr. Chen, Victoria said finally, I couldn't save your father. I couldn't repay the debt I owed him, but I can save you. I can make sure that Lily never faces the kind of uncertainty I faced as a child, and I can honor your father's memory by protecting the son he was so proud of. Marcus wiped his eyes with his uninjured hand. Mrs. Hartwell, I don't know what to say. Say you'll let me help you, Victoria replied. Say you'll let me do for you and Lily what your father did for me, give you a chance at a better life. If you're feeling the emotional weight of this incredible connection, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss these powerful stories. This is exactly why I believe everything happens for a reason. Before Marcus could respond, a soft knock interrupted them. Dr. Martinez entered, followed by a small figure that made Marcus's heart leap with relief and joy. Daddy! Lily Chen rushed to the side of the hospital bed, her dark eyes wide with worry and love. She had been crying, her cheeks were streaked with tears, and her small hands shook as she reached for her father. Hey, sweetheart, Marcus managed, his voice thick with emotion. Come here. Lily carefully climbed onto the chair beside his bed, mindful of the wires and tubes. I was so scared, Daddy. Mrs. Patterson said you were hurt helping someone, but nobody would tell me if you were okay. I'm okay, baby girl. I'm going to be fine. Victoria watched the reunion with tears in her eyes. The love between father and daughter was so pure, so evident, that it took her breath away. She thought of Emma, safe at home with their housekeeper, probably asking a million questions about the brave man who had protected her. Lily, Victoria said gently, I'm Victoria. I wanted to meet you because your daddy is a hero. He saved my little girl's life. Lily looked at Victoria with the serious expression that children sometimes wear when trying to process adult concepts. Is that why he got hurt? Yes, sweetheart. Your daddy protected my daughter Emma when some bad people tried to hurt her. Lily nodded solemnly, then looked back at her father with fierce pride. My daddy is the best daddy in the world. He takes care of everyone. He certainly does, Victoria agreed, glancing at Marcus. And now it's our turn to take care of him. Over the next hour, Victoria explained her plan. She had already spoken with the hospital's billing department. All of Marcus's medical expenses would be covered. She had contacted his landlord and paid his back rent, plus 6 months in advance. She had arranged for Lily to attend the same private school as Emma, with full tuition covered. And she had something else in mind, a position at Hartwell Development that would allow Marcus to use his construction knowledge without the physical demands his injured body could no longer handle. Project oversight, Victoria explained. You'd work with our construction teams to ensure quality and safety standards. The work would be primarily supervisory, with a salary that's triple what you were making before. Marcus listened to all of this with growing amazement and discomfort. Mrs. Hartwell, this is too much. I can't accept all of this." "Mr. Chen," Victoria said firmly, "your father saved my life 20 years ago and never asked for anything in return. You saved my daughter's life and nearly died in the process. The Chen family has a debt coming from the Hartwell family that I intend to pay." "But you don't understand," Marcus protested. "I'm not educated like you. I never went to college. I don't know anything about running projects or managing teams. You know about construction. You know about safety. You know about integrity." Victoria's voice was gentle but certain. "Those are the qualities I need most in my organization. The rest can be learned." Lily had been listening quietly to this adult conversation, but now she spoke up with the innocent wisdom of childhood. "Daddy, if the nice lady wants to help us because you helped her, maybe we should let her. Remember what you always tell me about accepting help when people offer it with good hearts?" Marcus looked down at his daughter, this wise, beautiful child who had been his anchor through every storm life had thrown at them. He thought about his father, who had spent his life quietly helping others without expecting recognition or reward. He thought about the roof where David Chen had saved a 14-year-old girl who would grow up to change the world. Maybe this was how the universe worked. Maybe kindness really did come back to you, sometimes in ways you never expected. "All right," Marcus said quietly, "but I want to earn everything you're giving me. I don't want charity. I want to work for it." Victoria smiled, the first genuine smile Marcus had seen from her since they met. "Mr. Chen, after what you've done for my family, you've already earned it. Everything else is just details." As Victoria prepared to leave that evening, she paused at the door of Marcus's room. Father and daughter were reading together, Lily curled up carefully beside her father's uninjured side, both of them absorbed in a picture book about brave knights and rescued princesses. For a moment, Victoria saw herself at 14, sitting alone on a hospital roof, convinced that no one in the world cared whether she lived or died. And she saw David Chen, the quiet security guard who had proven her wrong with patience and kindness. 20 years later, his son had saved her daughter's life. And now, finally, Victoria could repay the debt that had shaped everything she had become. Some connections ran deeper than coincidence. Some debts took decades to repay. And sometimes the child you save grows up to save yours. 2 months after the shooting, Marcus stood in the glass-walled conference room on the 38th floor of Hartwell Development, looking out over the Boston skyline. The view was breathtaking. The harbor sparkled in the afternoon sun, and the historic buildings of the North End spread out like a patchwork quilt below. It was the kind of view he had spent his entire life working on buildings he would never be able to afford to see from the inside. Now he was here as Victoria's newest project manager, overseeing the construction of a mixed-income housing development that would provide affordable homes for working families. The irony wasn't lost on him. The man who had once struggled to pay rent was now helping to build homes for others facing the same challenges. "Dad, this place is amazing!" Lily's voice echoed through the conference room as she ran to the windows, pressing her nose against the glass. It was a teacher development day, and Victoria had suggested Marcus bring Lily to the office rather than leave her with a babysitter. "Don't touch the glass, sweetheart," Marcus said automatically, but he was smiling. Seeing Lily's wonder at this new world never failed to warm his heart. In the 2 months since the shooting, his daughter had blossomed in ways he hadn't thought possible. The private school Victoria had enrolled her in challenged her academically while providing art, music, and sports programs Marcus could never have afforded. More importantly, Lily had found a best friend in Emma Hartwell. Mr. Chen, Victoria's assistant James Morrison, appeared in the doorway. "Mrs. Hartwell is ready for you in her office." Marcus gathered his project files and followed James down the hallway. Lily, skipping beside him. Over the past 2 months, these meetings with Victoria had become routine. She would review his progress reports. They would discuss upcoming projects, and inevitably, the conversation would drift to their daughters, their shared memories of David Chen, or the strange way their lives had intersected. But today felt different. Victoria was standing by her windows when they entered, her posture tense in a way that Marcus had learned to recognize as trouble. Victoria! Marcus had stopped using formal titles weeks ago at her insistence. Is everything okay? She turned, and Marcus saw something in her expression that made his stomach tighten. Fear. Not the controlled concern of a busy executive dealing with a difficult project, but genuine bone-deep fear. We need to talk, Victoria said quietly. Lily, sweetheart, would you like to see Emma? She's in the employee lounge with her tutor. Lily's face lit up. Yes. Can we show each other our new drawings? Of course, Victoria smiled, but Marcus could see the strain around her eyes. James will take you down. After Lily left, Victoria closed the door and activated the privacy screen, a feature Marcus had learned she only used for the most sensitive conversations. Victoria, you're scaring me, Marcus said. What's going on? Victoria pulled a manila envelope from her desk drawer. Yesterday, I received this in the mail. She handed him the envelope. There was no return address, just his name, written in block letters across the front. Marcus opened it and found a single photograph inside. His blood turned to ice. It was a picture of Lily leaving her new school. Her small hand clutched in Emma's as they walked toward the pickup area. But the photo had been taken from a distance with a telephoto lens, and someone had drawn a red circle around both girls. Across the bottom, in the same block letters, someone had written, "Heroes don't always win." Jesus, Marcus whispered, his hands shaking. Who would do this? I've had my security team investigating for the past 24 hours, Victoria said. Marcus, I think this is connected to the original shooting. Marcus looked up from the photograph, confusion and fear warring in his eyes. What do you mean? Victoria pulled up a news article on her tablet. The shooter, Derek Morrison, he died at the scene, but the FBI has been investigating his background. He wasn't some random lunatic, Marcus. He was a hired gun. Someone paid him to target Emma. The room seemed to tilt around Marcus. Someone wanted to kill Emma, but why? I've made a lot of enemies in business, Victoria said grimly. Hostile takeovers, development projects that displaced existing communities, competition for lucrative contracts. The FBI thinks someone hired Morrison to hurt me by targeting my daughter. Marcus sank into a chair, the photograph still clutched in his hands. And now they're threatening Lily because you stopped them, Victoria finished. Because you saved Emma and became a public hero. Whoever hired Morrison knows that hurting Lily would destroy you, and hurting you would destroy me. The implications hit Marcus like another bullet to the chest. By saving Emma, by accepting Victoria's help, by allowing their families to become intertwined, he had painted a target on his own daughter's back. I have to take Lily and leave, Marcus said, standing abruptly. I have to get her away from here, away from Emma, away from you. As long as we're connected, she's in danger. Marcus, no. Victoria stepped forward, her voice urgent. Running won't solve this. Whoever is behind this has resources, connections. If they want to find you, they will. Then what do you suggest? Marcus's voice was tight with barely controlled panic. I can't put Lily at risk. I won't let my daughter pay the price for my decision to help you. Victoria was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the city below. When she spoke, her voice was steady and determined, the voice of a woman who had built an empire by refusing to back down from fights. We fight back, she said. We find whoever is behind this and we end it. Victoria, these aren't business competitors we're talking about. This is someone who hires assassins to murder children. Which is exactly why we can't run. Victoria turned to face him fully. Marcus, my security team is the best in the business. We have resources, connections, the ability to track down leads that the FBI can't follow. If we work together, no. Marcus's voice was firm. I'm grateful for everything you've done for us, but I won't put Lily in more danger just because you want to go to war with whoever did this. Victoria flinched as if he had slapped her. You think this is about my ego? You think I want to fight because I'm too proud to back down? I think you're used to solving problems by throwing money and power at them, Marcus said, immediately regretting the harshness in his voice. But this isn't a business deal, Victoria. This is my daughter's life. The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria stared at Marcus, hurt and anger warring in her expression. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but steady. You're right. I am used to solving problems with money and power. Do you know why? She walked to her desk and pulled out a framed photograph, a picture of herself at 14, taken just months after David Chen had talked her down from that roof. She was thin, hollow-eyed, wearing clothes that were too big for her small frame. Because when I was 14 and someone was threatening me, I had no money and no power, Victoria said. I had no one to protect me except a night security guard who cared enough to sit on a roof all night and convince me that my life mattered. She set the photograph down gently. Your father gave me the foundation to build something that could protect the people I love, and I'll be damned if I let anyone hurt the daughter of the man who saved my life. Marcus felt his anger deflating, replaced by understanding. Victoria wasn't trying to control the situation out of ego or habit. She was trying to protect Lily the same way David Chen had protected her, by using every resource at her disposal to ensure a child's safety. I'm sorry, Marcus said quietly. I didn't mean— Yes, you did, and you weren't entirely wrong. Victoria's smile was sad but understanding. I do try to solve problems with money and power. But Marcus, in this case, money and power might be exactly what we need. Before Marcus could respond, James Morrison burst through the door without knocking. Something that had never happened in the 8 years he had worked for Victoria. Mrs. Hartwell, we have a problem. His face was pale, and his usual professional composure had cracked completely. Security just called. Someone tried to grab Emma and Lily from the employee lounge. The world stopped. Marcus felt the air leave his lungs as if he had been punched in the stomach. Are they okay? Where are they? They're safe, James said quickly. Security stopped it before anything happened. But Marcus— He paused, his expression grim. The man who tried to take them, he had a gun. Victoria was already moving, grabbing her phone and issuing rapid-fire instructions to her security team. But Marcus couldn't hear anything over the roaring in his ears. Someone had tried to take Lily, his little girl, who still slept with her stuffed elephant and drew pictures of rainbows, had been targeted by armed men. Where is she? Marcus's voice came out as a growl. Security suite on the 40th floor, James said. Both girls are there with Emma's bodyguard. Marcus was out the door before James finished speaking, taking the stairs 3 at a time. Victoria followed, her heels clicking rapidly against the concrete steps. By the time they reached the 40th floor, Marcus was shaking with a combination of adrenaline and rage. The security suite looked like something out of a spy movie, monitors covering every wall, displaying feeds from cameras throughout the building and surrounding streets. In the center of the room, Emma and Lily sat together on a leather couch, flanked by 2 stern-faced security guards. Emma's usual bodyguard, a former Navy SEAL named Thomas Wright, stood nearby with his hand resting on his concealed weapon. "Daddy!" Lily jumped up and ran to Marcus, throwing her arms around his waist. She was trying to be brave, but he could feel her trembling against him. "I'm here, baby girl. I'm here." Marcus knelt down and held her tightly, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo and trying to convince himself that she was really safe. Emma approached them more slowly, her green eyes wide with fear but also with something else, determination. At 8 years old, she was already showing signs of her mother's strength. "Mr. Chen," Emma said seriously, "the bad man said he was going to take me and Lily somewhere, but Thomas stopped him. Thomas is really good at stopping bad people." Victoria knelt beside her daughter, checking her for injuries even though she could see Emma was unharmed. "Are you okay, sweetheart? Did he hurt you?" "No, Mommy, but he scared Lily and that made me mad. Nobody should scare Lily. She's my best friend." Despite everything, Marcus found himself smiling. Emma Hartwell was definitely her mother's daughter, protective, fierce, unwilling to back down when someone she loved was threatened. Thomas Wright approached them, his expression professional but concerned. "Mrs. Hartwell, we need to talk, privately." Victoria nodded and followed him to the far corner of the room. Marcus stayed with the girls, but he could see the tension in Victoria's posture as Wright briefed her on what had happened. After a few minutes, she returned, her face pale but determined. "Marcus, we need to get the girls somewhere safe while we figure out our next move." "Where?" Marcus asked. "If they can get to them here in your building with all this security." "I have a safe house," Victoria said. "Off the grid, full security team, completely isolated. The girls will be protected while we hunt down whoever is behind this." Marcus looked down at Lily, who was clinging to his hand like a lifeline. The thought of hiding his daughter away, of living in fear indefinitely, made him sick, but the alternative, risking her life, was unthinkable. "How long?" he asked. "However long it takes," Victoria said firmly. Over the next hour, arrangements were made with military precision. A convoy of 3 black SUVs would transport them to the safe house, a compound in the mountains of New Hampshire that Victoria had purchased years earlier but never used. The girls would have tutors, security, everything they needed for an extended stay. As they prepared to leave, Marcus pulled Victoria aside. "I need you to promise me something. Anything. If this gets too dangerous, if there's any chance that Lily could be hurt, I'm taking her and we're disappearing. New identities, new life, whatever it takes to keep her safe." Victoria nodded slowly. "I understand. But Marcus, I need you to promise me something too." "What?" "Don't give up on us. Don't give up on what we've built together. Our girls are best friends. You're the best project manager I've ever worked with, and—" She paused, color rising in her cheeks. "And I care about you. More than I should, probably. But I do." Marcus felt his heart skip. Over the past 2 months, he had begun to suspect that his feelings for Victoria went beyond gratitude and friendship. But hearing her say it, seeing the vulnerability in her eyes, made it real in a way that took his breath away. "Victoria, "Daddy, are we going on a vacation?" Lily interrupted, appearing at his side with a small suitcase that Emma had helped her pack. "Something like that, sweetheart." "Good. Emma says the safe house has a swimming pool and horses. I've never seen a real horse before." Marcus looked at his daughter's excited face, then at Emma, who was chattering about all the fun they would have together. Despite the danger, despite the fear, the girls were turning this into an adventure. Their resilience humbled him. "All right," Marcus said, looking back at Victoria. "We do this together, but the moment I think Lily is in more danger because of our connection than she would be without it, we're gone." Victoria nodded. "Fair enough. But Marcus, I meant what I said. Don't give up on us. The safe house turned out to be more compound than house, a sprawling estate surrounded by high walls and monitored by a security team that could have protected a small country. But for Emma and Lily, it was paradise. There were indeed horses, along with a swimming pool, a library, a game room, and acres of woods to explore under the watchful eyes of their guards. For 3 days, it almost felt like a vacation. The girls rode horses, swam, played games, and seemed to forget entirely about the danger that had brought them there. Marcus found himself relaxing slightly, able to smile as he watched Lily experience luxuries she had never dreamed of. But on the 4th day, everything changed. Marcus was reading in the library while the girls napped when Victoria burst through the door, her phone pressed to her ear and her face white with fear. "Yes, I understand," she was saying into the phone. "How long do we have?" She listened for a moment, then hung up and turned to Marcus. "They found us." "What do you mean they found us?" "My security team just intercepted communications, indicating that whoever is behind this knows where we are. They're planning to hit the compound tonight." Marcus felt the familiar ice-cold panic flooding his system. "How is that possible? You said this place was off the grid." "Someone on the inside," Victoria said grimly. "Someone with access to our security protocols. We have maybe 2 hours before they arrive. Then we leave, now." "Marcus, there's nowhere to run. If they have someone inside my organization, they'll track us wherever we go." Marcus stared at her, understanding dawning in his eyes. "You're saying we make a stand here. I'm saying we end this here, tonight. My security team is the best in the business. This compound is defensible, and we have advance warning. If we're going to fight, this is our best chance." Before Marcus could respond, they heard footsteps in the hallway. Emma appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Mommy, what's wrong? You look scared." Victoria knelt down and pulled her daughter into her arms. "Everything's going to be okay, sweetheart, but we might have some visitors tonight, and I need you to stay in the safe room with Lily, okay?" "Are they bad visitors?" "They might be." Emma considered this with the seriousness of an 8-year-old processing adult problems. "Will Thomas protect us?" "Thomas and all his friends will protect you, but I need you to promise me that you'll take care of Lily if she gets scared." "I promise, Mommy. Lily is brave, but I'll take care of her anyway." As Victoria hugged her daughter, Marcus made a decision that surprised even himself. He wasn't going to run. He wasn't going to spend the rest of his life looking over his shoulder, wondering when the next threat would come. His father had taught him that some things were worth fighting for, worth risking everything to protect. Lily and Emma were worth fighting for. The battle began at 11:30 that night. Marcus stood in the compound's security center, watching monitor feeds as dark figures moved through the woods surrounding the estate. There were more of them than Victoria's team had expected, at least a dozen armed men approaching from multiple directions. "They're professionals," Thomas Wright observed, studying the tactical patterns of movement on the screens. "Military training, good equipment. This isn't some random gang. Someone spent serious money on this operation." In the safe room 3 floors below, Emma and Lily were asleep in a reinforced bunker that could withstand anything short of a direct missile strike. Victoria sat beside Marcus, her hand resting on his arm, both of them watching their world prepare for war. "Any regrets?" Victoria asked quietly. Marcus thought about his father, sitting on a hospital roof 20 years ago, convincing a suicidal teenager that her life had value. He thought about the moment in the coffee shop when he had thrown himself over Emma without hesitation. He thought about Lily, sleeping peacefully below, trusting him to keep her safe. "None," Marcus said. "You." Victoria smiled, and for a moment she looked exactly like the scared 14-year-old girl David Chen had saved. Just one. I wish I could have thanked your father in person. The first shots shattered the night silence like thunder. The compound's perimeter alarm screamed as the attackers breached the outer fence. Through the monitors, Marcus watched Victoria's security team engage the intruders with professional precision. Muzzle flashes lit up the darkness like deadly fireworks. "They're trying to breach the main entrance," Wright reported, his voice calm despite the chaos erupting around them. "Alpha team is holding them back, but we've got another group moving around the east side." Victoria was coordinating the defense through her headset, her voice steady and commanding. "Beta team, fall back to checkpoint 2. Don't let them flank us." Marcus felt helpless watching the battle unfold on screens. These people were trying to kill his daughter, trying to destroy everything he had built with Victoria, and all he could do was stand in a control room and watch other people fight for him. "I should be out there," he said. "Your job is to stay alive," Wright replied without looking away from the monitors. "If something happens to Mrs. Hartwell and me, you're the only one who can get those girls out of here." A new alarm began blaring. Someone had breached the inner perimeter. On the monitor, Marcus could see a figure moving through the main house, heading for the stairs that led to the safe room. "How did they get past?" Victoria began, then stopped as understanding flooded her face. "Someone's been feeding them information about our security layout. They know exactly where the safe room is." Wright was already moving, drawing his weapon as he headed for the door. "Lock this room down. Don't open it for anyone but me." But before he could leave, the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in a few seconds later, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. Through the monitors, Marcus could see that the attackers had cut the main power lines. In the safe room below, backup generators would keep Lily and Emma protected, but up here, they were vulnerable. "Victoria," Marcus said quietly, "I need you to promise me something." She looked at him, her face pale in the red light. "If this goes wrong, if they get past us, you save those girls. You take them and you run, and you don't look back." "Marcus, promise me." "Lily trusts you. If I can't protect her, I need to know you will." Victoria nodded, tears glittering in the emergency lighting. "I promise, but Marcus, I need the same promise from you. If something happens to me, nothing's going to happen to you." The control room door exploded inward. Marcus threw himself in front of Victoria as 3 armed figures in tactical gear poured through the doorway. The world slowed down, just like it had in the coffee shop 2 months earlier. He could see the muzzles of their weapons swinging toward Victoria, could see her eyes widening in fear, could hear his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. For the second time in 2 months, Marcus Chen threw himself between bullets and someone he loved. The first shot caught him in the shoulder, the same shoulder that was still healing from the coffee shop. The second one grazed his ribs. But this time, Marcus wasn't defenseless. This time, he had something worth fighting for and the means to fight back. Wright's training over the past few days had been thorough. Marcus rolled behind a bank of computer monitors, pulling Victoria with him as he drew the gun Wright had insisted he carry. "Stay down," he whispered to Victoria, then rose and returned fire. Marcus had never shot at another human being in his life, but protecting Lily and Emma made the choice simple. These people wanted to hurt his daughter. That was all he needed to know. The firefight lasted less than 2 minutes, but it felt like hours. When it was over, 2 of the attackers were down, and the third had retreated. Marcus's shoulder was bleeding heavily, but he was alive. More importantly, Victoria was alive. "The safe room," Victoria gasped, pulling out her phone. "I need to check on the girls." The call connected immediately. Emma's voice came through the speaker, high and frightened, but steady. "Mommy, we heard loud noises. Lily is scared." "I'm here, sweetheart. Are you both okay?" "Yes. The room is locked like you showed us. "But Mommy, I think someone is trying to get in. There's banging on the door." Marcus's blood turned to ice. The safe room was supposed to be impenetrable. If someone was trying to break in... "Emma," Victoria said urgently, "is there a red button on the wall next to the door?" "Yes." "I need you to press it right now. Can you do that for me?" "I pressed it, Mommy." "Good girl. Now I need you and Lily to go to the very back corner of the room and stay there until Thomas comes to get you. Don't open the door for anyone except Thomas." Through the security monitors, Marcus could see Wright fighting his way through the compound toward the safe room. But he was outnumbered and there were more attackers than anyone had anticipated. He's not going to make it in time, Marcus realized. Victoria looked at the monitors, then at Marcus. Her face was pale but determined. "Then we go ourselves." "Victoria, you're not trained for this. Neither were you 20 minutes ago." She picked up Wright's backup weapon and checked the magazine with surprising competence. "My girls are down there, Marcus. Your daughter is down there. I'm not sitting in this room while someone tries to hurt them." Marcus looked at this woman, this billionaire CEO who had probably never held a gun in her life, and saw his father's courage looking back at him. David Chen had climbed onto a roof to save a stranger's daughter. Victoria Hartwell was ready to walk into a war zone to save his. "All right," Marcus said, "but we do this smart. We stick together, we watch each other's backs, and we get those girls out of there." They made their way through the compound like ghosts, moving from shadow to shadow as gunfire echoed through the halls around them. Marcus's shoulder throbbed with every step, but adrenaline kept him moving. Somewhere ahead, his daughter was trapped and terrified, counting on him to protect her, just like his father would have done, just like David Chen had done on a hospital roof 20 years ago. They reached the stairway leading to the safe room just as the last attacker fell to Wright's return fire. The security chief was wounded but alive, leaning against the wall and breathing heavily. "The girls?" Marcus asked immediately. "Safe. The room held." Wright gestured toward the reinforced door. "But Marcus, we've got a bigger problem." "What do you mean?" Wright held up a radio he had taken from one of the attackers. Static crackled, then a familiar voice came through clearly. "Status report. Are the targets secured?" Marcus's blood froze. He recognized that voice. It belonged to James Morrison, Victoria's assistant, the man who had worked for her for 8 years, who knew every detail of their security protocols, who had access to everything. Victoria stared at the radio in shock. "James, but why would he—" Wright's expression was grim. "Because someone offered him more money than you were paying him. Someone who wanted Emma dead and was willing to pay whatever it took." The radio crackled again. "I repeat, status report. The client is getting impatient." Wright keyed the microphone. "This is Hartwell Security. All targets are secure. Repeat, all targets are secure." There was a pause. Then James's voice again, suspicious now. "Who is this? You're not part of the tactical team." "The tactical team is dead," Wright said bluntly. "And James, so are you." Marcus heard footsteps behind them and spun around, weapon raised, but it was only more of Victoria's security team, the ones who had survived the assault. The compound was secure, but Marcus knew this was far from over. "Victoria," he said quietly, "we need to know who hired James. We need to know who wants Emma dead badly enough to organize something like this." Victoria nodded, but her attention was focused on the safe room door. She was entering her security code, her hands shaking slightly. The heavy door swung open with a soft hiss. "Mommy!" Emma flew into Victoria's arms, followed closely by Lily, who attached herself to Marcus like she was afraid he might disappear. "Are you hurt, Daddy?" Lily asked, noticing the blood on his shoulder. "I'm okay, baby girl, just a scratch." But as Marcus held his daughter, as he watched Victoria comfort Emma, he knew this wasn't over. Someone with serious money and connections had orchestrated tonight's attack. Until they found out who, until they stopped the threat at its source, neither family would ever be safe. The war had just begun. 2 days later, they had their answer. Victoria sat in the FBI field office in Boston, staring at photographs and financial records spread across the conference table. Beside her, Marcus reviewed documents that painted a picture of corporate warfare taken to its most extreme conclusion. Bradley Morrison, Special Agent Sarah Chen, no relation to Marcus despite the shared name, explained as she pointed to a photograph of a distinguished man in his 60s. CEO of Morrison Development, your biggest competitor for the Richardson Harbor project. Victoria's face was stone. The contract worth $2 billion. Exactly. According to James Morrison's confession, and yes, he's related to Bradley, his nephew, Bradley hired the original shooter to kill Emma as revenge for you underbidding them on 3 major projects this year. Marcus felt sick. He wanted to murder a child over a business deal. It wasn't just business to him, Agent Chen continued. Morrison Development has been struggling financially for 2 years. Losing those contracts to Hartwell Development pushed them to the edge of bankruptcy. Bradley Morrison decided that if he couldn't beat you in the market, he'd destroy you personally. Victoria's hands clenched into fists. So he hired someone to kill my daughter. When that failed, when Marcus became a public hero for saving Emma, Morrison saw an opportunity for revenge. He figured that threatening Marcus's daughter would hurt you just as much as threatening your own. He was right, Victoria said quietly. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial records showing payments to Derek Morrison, the original shooter. Communications between Bradley Morrison and his nephew James about security protocols at Hartwell Development. Planning documents for the assault on the safe house. Bradley Morrison has been arrested and charged with conspiracy to commit murder, among other things, Agent Chen said. He's looking at life without parole. James Morrison is cooperating fully in exchange for a reduced sentence. Marcus leaned back in his chair, feeling exhausted but relieved. So it's over? The immediate threat is neutralized, Agent Chen confirmed. Morrison Development is finished. They've already filed for bankruptcy, and Bradley Morrison's associates have made it clear they want nothing to do with his extreme methods. As they left the FBI office, Marcus and Victoria walked in silence toward the parking garage. Both were processing the magnitude of what had happened, the realization that their lives had been turned upside down because of one man's greed and jealousy. Marcus, Victoria said finally, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. He stopped walking and turned to face her. What is it? Do you regret it? Any of it? Saving Emma, accepting my help, letting our families become connected? Marcus thought about everything that had happened since that moment in the coffee shop. The shooting, the hospital, learning about his father's connection to Victoria, the job that had changed his life, the growing feelings between them, and yes, the danger that had nearly cost them everything. No, he said finally, I don't regret any of it. Even though it nearly got Lily killed? Victoria, Lily has spent the last 2 months happier than I've ever seen her. She has a best friend who adores her. She's getting an education I could never have provided, and she's part of something bigger than just the 2 of us struggling to survive. He reached out and took Victoria's hand. Yes, there was danger, but there's always danger in the world. At least this time, we had the resources to fight back. Victoria smiled, the first genuine smile he had seen from her since the threats began. I was hoping you'd say that. Why? Instead of answering, Victoria led him to a quiet corner of the parking garage. "Because I have something to tell you, and I didn't want to say it if you were planning to disappear from our lives." Marcus felt his heart rate pick up. "What is it?" "I'm in love with you," Victoria said simply. "Not because you saved Emma, not because of your connection to my past, not because you're a good employee. I'm in love with the man who stops to help strangers in rainstorms, who takes bullets to protect children he's never met, who loves his daughter enough to give up everything to keep her safe." She paused. "I'm in love with you, Marcus Chen, and I think you might be in love with me too." Marcus stared at her, his mind reeling. Over the past 2 months, he had felt his feelings for Victoria deepening beyond gratitude, beyond friendship, into something that scared him with its intensity. But hearing her say it, seeing the vulnerability in her eyes, made it real in a way that took his breath away. "I am," he admitted. "I'm in love with you too, but Victoria, our lives are so different. Your world, my background." "Stop." Victoria stepped closer, her hand still holding his. "Your background is exactly why I love you. You've never lost sight of what matters. You've never let success change who you are at your core. You're the most genuine, honorable man I've ever known." "Victoria," she silenced him with a kiss that was gentle and fierce at the same time, full of promise and hope and the recognition that they had found something worth fighting for. When they broke apart, Marcus was smiling. "So what happens now?" "Now," Victoria said, "we go pick up our daughters from school and we start building the life we almost lost." 6 months later, Marcus stood in the backyard of Victoria's, their house, watching Emma and Lily play on the swing set he had built for them. The house was in a quiet suburb outside Boston, large enough for their blended family, but not so ostentatious that it felt like a museum. It was a home filled with children's laughter and the comfortable chaos of a family that had chosen each other. "Daddy, push me higher," Lily called from her swing, her feet stretched toward the sky. "Me too, Mr. Chen," Emma added, not to be outdone by her best friend. Marcus laughed and gave each girl a gentle push, marveling at how normal this felt. 6 months ago, he had been a struggling single father facing eviction and unemployment. Now he was engaged to a woman who challenged and inspired him, raising 2 daughters who brought joy to every day, and working in a career that let him make a real difference in his community. "They're going to wear you out," Victoria observed, joining him in the yard. She was still in her business clothes from the office, but she had kicked off her heels and rolled up her sleeves, ready to transition from CEO to mom. "I can handle it," Marcus said, wrapping his arm around her waist. "Besides, fair is fair. You handled the board meeting with the investors for the new affordable housing project. I can handle swing duty." Victoria leaned into him, watching their daughters with contentment. "How did the site inspection go today?" "Really well. The foundation is solid, the framing is ahead of schedule, and we're still under budget. 60 families are going to have affordable homes because of this project." 60 families are going to have homes because you're an excellent project manager," Victoria corrected. "I just write the checks." "Mommy, Daddy, watch this," Emma called, then proceeded to jump off her swing at the highest point of its arc, landing in the soft grass with a dramatic flourish. "Emma Hartwell, what have I told you about jumping off swings?" Victoria called, but she was laughing. "That it's dangerous and I shouldn't do it," Emma replied cheerfully, "but also that sometimes you have to be brave and take risks." "I don't think that's exactly what I said. It's what Lily and I heard." Marcus chuckled as Lily, not to be outdone, made her own spectacular jump from her swing. "I think we're outnumbered." "Definitely outnumbered," Victoria agreed, "but I can think of worse problems to have." As evening settled over their backyard, as their daughters chased fireflies and filled the air with laughter, Marcus thought about the path that had led them here. It had started with 6 bullets and a stranger's child. It had continued with revelations about the past and connections neither of them could have imagined. It had been tested by danger and threat and the realization that sometimes doing the right thing comes with a price. But it had brought them here to this moment, to this family they had built together. "Victoria," Marcus said quietly, "do you really think your father would have approved of us?" Victoria was quiet for a moment, watching their daughters. "I think he would have been proud that the son he raised became the kind of man who throws himself in front of bullets to save strangers. And I think he would have been amazed to see how his kindness to a scared 14-year-old girl rippled forward to save his own son's life 20 years later." "Ripple effects," Marcus murmured. "The best kind," Victoria agreed. Later that night, after the girls were asleep and the house was quiet, Marcus and Victoria sat on their back porch, sharing a bottle of wine and planning their wedding. It would be small, intimate, focused on family rather than spectacle. Emma and Lily would be joint maids of honor because they insisted they couldn't choose between each other, and besides, they had practically arranged the whole relationship anyway. "Any regrets?" Victoria asked, the same question she had posed that night at the safe house when armed men were approaching through the darkness. Marcus looked through the window at the home they had built together, at the pictures on the walls that showed their journey from strangers to family, at the evidence of a life he had never dared to dream possible. "None," he said, just as he had that night. "You?" Victoria smiled, the same smile that had convinced him to trust her in a hospital room months earlier. "Just one." "What's that?" "I wish we could thank your father together. I wish he could see what his kindness grew into." Marcus was quiet for a moment, then pointed toward the window where a small framed photograph sat on the mantel. It showed David Chen in his security uniform, taken the year before he died. Beside it sat Victoria's photo from when she was 14, the scared girl he had saved. "I think he can see," Marcus said softly. "I think he knows." And somewhere in the quiet night, with fireflies dancing through the darkness and 2 little girls sleeping safely in their beds, it felt like maybe David Chen was smiling. Some connections run deeper than coincidence. Some debts take a generation to repay, and sometimes the bullet you take for a stranger's child leads you home to the family you were always meant to have. The story that began with 6 bullets in a coffee shop had become something beautiful, something lasting, something that honored the memory of a night security guard who had believed that every life had value, even when that life couldn't see it for itself. Marcus Chen had saved Emma Hartwell's life. Victoria Hartwell had saved his, and together they had saved each other's hearts. Thank you so much for staying with this incredible journey of love, sacrifice, and the way kindness creates ripples that can change everything. If this story moved you, make sure to subscribe and check out the other emotional stories on your screen right now. I promise they'll touch your heart just as much. What act of kindness changed your life forever? Share your story in the comments below. See you in the next story.